your Bibles to the book of Psalm, chapter 73, please. You know, the slogan of the Rock of Central Florida is, where the journey isn't ordinary. I would say that that's pretty well demonstrated on a regular basis. But I am thankful that in this house we can press into these moments and these times that bring about the kind of change in us that helps us be able to walk together in such a way where healing can do its work. A lot of times the reason healing doesn't perform its perfect work in people is because there's never been a pathway for healing to enter in. We keep building walls to keep healing on the outside. We ask for it, it comes to the door, but we don't open the door to let it in. It knocks, it wants to come, it wants to reveal, but we keep it out. That's not the pathway. Yahweh wants to do a work in us. And today, as I talk about climbing up the downside, I'm very excited about this word and very excited about what I know and believe with all of my heart that this word can produce. So if you're ready, read with me or follow along with me as I read Psalm 73, beginning with verse 27. It says this, "For behold, those who are far from you shall perish. You put an end to everyone who is unfaithful to you. But for me, it is good to be near God." Oh, man, don't you like that? Say that with me. Say, for me, put your hands on yourself. Say, for me, it is good to be near God. I have made the Lord God my refuge, that I may tell of all your works. I have made the Lord God my refuge, so that I may tell of all your works. I want to begin this morning by talking about understanding where my safety is. Just a week ago, a little over a week ago, my wife and I got a new puppy. He is sweet. He is as sweet as he can be, but he is all puppy. He is a yellow lab, and his teeth are like daggers. I mean, they are sharp. They will puncture. I have marks literally all over me. All of us do. If you've come into my house, you are marked because he attacks. And he is this little bitty 12-pound piece of yellow fur that my large chocolate lab views as a little chicken nugget. He wants to eat him. And this little thing is running around, and because my 9-year-old chocolate lab isn't so excited about an 8-week-old yellow lab, there's a little bit of conflict that happens around the house every now and then. And because my chocolate lab, for those of you that have been at my house, you know my chocolate lab, he loves me. He's my dog. Wherever I'm at, that's where he is. If I move into the living room, he's going to come in the living room and lay down at my feet. If I go in the kitchen, he'll go in the kitchen and lay down at my feet. If somebody gets too close to me, he doesn't like it, and he'll let you know. If an animal gets within 10 feet of me, he lets them know, I'm about to eat you. And he will show those teeth, and he will go, and he'll even lurch, and let them know, don't get close. So we brought this little yellow lab, this little tiny, beautiful pile of fur, into the house. Well, he's 8 weeks old. He's clueless. That just looks like a big teddy bear to me. He looks at Hershey, and he's thinking, oh, big fur, big fur. He takes off running. He comes in the house. He takes off and he bounces. He's like a rabbit. I think he's half rabbit, half cat. He bounces around and he jumps and he jumps and he goes to lurch at Hershey, and Hershey. And I mean, he turned around at one point. He turned around. I was in one end of the house with the dogs. He jumped up at Hershey. Hershey turned and growled at him. That dog took off so fast. Whoo! He was on the other side of he burned a mark in my floor getting to the other side of the house. And he's up beside the door, and he didn't want to move. He's just kneeling down beside the door at the garage because he was afraid. And that's happened over and over again in the little over a week that we've had him, and each day it gets better, but he had to come to a place where he began to understand, Sydney, where his safety was. When he came into the house, he didn't understand where his safety was. He thought he was safe everywhere in the conditions that we got him out of. When my wife and I drove there, I'm not kidding, it was so bad. It was so far out in the sticks doesn't even know that those sticks exist. We were so far out there, my wife said, man, these conditions are terrible. I said, honey, the police don't even know this place exists. It was so far out that we were driving her car around this place, and it was raining, and it was a dirt road. And in the middle of nowhere, I started hearing banjos playing. And we're driving around. If you don't know what I'm saying, that's okay. We're driving around this dirt road, and it was so bad, Jordan, the potholes were so deep. There were little ponds, and her car would go in it, and an alarm would go beep, 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 because the water was all the way up to the door. And it was raining, and we still had a mile to go. I said, we got to get the dog and get out so that we can get out of here before we're stranded back here in the who knows where. No one will ever find us. So we get the dog, we get home, and we bring him into the house, and he had to learn, DJ, where his safety was. He had to learn, where is safety? What does safety feel like? What does safety look like? Because he didn't know. And even this morning, when I got up this morning at 3:30, I went out there, and I went up, and I went upstairs for a little bit, and then he was sleeping. I came back down when I finally came down to get him. And when I took him outside, I picked him out of the laundry room, and I put him on the floor, and Hershey was there, and he just kind of stood there for a second and looked at Hershey, and when he realized Hershey wasn't going to eat him, then he jumped and did his thing, and then I opened the door, and he went outside and went to the bathroom. But he's learned, and he's still cautious. Even though now he's come to the place where he knows where safety is, he's learned to be cautious. He's learned to say, you know what, I've got to figure this thing out. So I want to say to you this morning, I want to start by saying this: you need to understand where your safety is. We expect to get a little weary when climbing up a mountain, and then expect to rest when we're going down the mountain. That's natural. I go camping, and many of you have gone camping with me from time to time over the years, and when I go camping, one of the spots that I like to go to is treacherous. I mean, it is very, very difficult. It's fun going in, because going in, when you park the truck, and those of you that have been on this particular trail with me can attest to what I'm about to say. When you first go in and you're going down this long hill, it's a long ways, like 2 miles down, and it's just down, and it's like, oh, this is easy. You got a 50-pound backpack on your back, at least mine, if it's James Padgett or Matt Hoffman, there's like 80 pounds. But you're going down this hill, and you're like, oh, this is easy. But then when you're coming out, that thing, man, you start going up that hill, and you get about 100 feet. Going down, you don't stop. You just, whistle while we work. But then you're coming out, and your pack's lighter because you've eaten whatever food you've got, and you're coming out. And man, you walk up that hill, and it's dirt, especially if it rained and it's muddy. And you're trying to climb this hill, man, you get about, I'm not kidding, 100 feet. And you're like, okay, 30 seconds. You get down that 2 miles in about 30 minutes. It takes you about 3 hours to get up. I'm not kidding. To get up it. Because you'll go 100 and you're just like, ugh. And you got to rest. And you got to rest. It's work to get up the hill. Requires a lot of work to get up the hill. Now, what would happen? What would be different if when we went down the hill and we had enough rope, if we prepared and we planned and we lived in such a way where we thought this thing out well, if we went down the hill and we just took a rope and we tied it to the truck. Just track with me. I know it's impossible. Forget impossible, but nothing is impossible with God. And you tied a rope to the hitch of my truck. And when you're going down the trail, you just keep unraveling Bear Grylls does it. He never runs out of rope. And you go down that trail, And you wrap it around this tree, you wrap it around this tree, and 2 miles down it. Then when you're coming out, and it takes a little work. You work, you have to do spend a little effort, spend a little time going down. You don't just hurry on down. You take a little effort, and you consider. Now, what can I do going down? Everybody say this with me. What can I do going down that will help me when I'm going up? Oh, that sounded so good. Let's say that again. Let's ask that again. What can I do going down that will help me when I'm going up? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. So we're going down and we've run this rope. Now what happens when after you've been out there camping for a few days, you turn around, you're coming back, and you get to the bottom of that 2-mile trail, Archie, and you get up there and you grab that bottom rope, and now all of a sudden, where you were having to really just haul this and it was all you, now you've got this little rope. And just that little bit, you'd be surprised at how little it takes to assist you to be able to speed up the process and make the process a little less daunting. And you're pulling that rope because you prepared, Hans, going down. You're better prepared to go up. So when we consider this, we expect to get weary when we're climbing a mountain. We expect, I'm going to get tired, and then rest when we're going down. But what if we are prepared to balance this? So that our going up and our going down one depends on the other. Going up and going down, each of them have provided an answer for the other. Have provided in some way assistance for the other. Let's talk about that this morning. Let me say this. Yahweh sent his answer. Yahweh sent his answer before we even know there is a problem. When we go down a hill, like I have never until 2 minutes ago considered taking a rope all the way down the mountain. In fact, I've only gone back to that mountain a couple times. But I've never considered that. Now, Yahweh sent his answer before I was ever even aware there is a problem. So when I am climbing up the downside, what does that look like if I were going to give you a visual of what climbing up the downside looks like? It would look like this. If I showed you, and I tried to find a graphic that would really demonstrate this, and I couldn't find one, but you know what it looks like when you're climbing up a mountain. They show a little man and he's climbing and he's doing, and it's, Tom Cruise hanging on the side, and whatever it might be, and all of this, and then, but how do you graphically demonstrate climbing up the side that's going down? Because it's not hard. What effort is required to get down? But what if when things are easy? See, the climb represents the moments that it's a challenge in our lives. How many have ever felt like you've spent a lot of time climbing? How many you feel like too often you're on the upside of the mountain and you're just ready for the downside of the mountain? And so many of us, and often, we'll get up that mountain and we've spent so much energy getting up the mountain. When we go down, we don't want to consider that there might be some effort that might need to be applied. No, I just wait. No, I'm just not going to do any effort. I'm just going to go ahead. And see, when we're going up the mountain, when we're coming out, every 100 feet, we're resting for 30 seconds. We keep telling ourselves, there is a Burger King 3 miles away. All we got to do is get to the top of this mountain. I'm telling you, a Whopper never tasted so good after dried food for 3 days. I don't eat that stuff anymore, but I haven't been to the mountains in a while either. So when you're climbing up, you see that visual of climbing up and the effort that it takes, and the preparation before we got there. Now, I prepared. When I leave my house or leave the church or wherever we're meeting at, before we leave to go to the mountains, I always prepare. I know I've got my food, I've got my matches, I've got whatever I need in the mountains. I've got my 44 or my 45. I've got whatever I need in the mountains in case there's bad people or animals. Unless I'm Cody, I don't take a weapon, I just find one in the river. true. So I prepare before I go, but going down the mountain, there's no preparation. I don't even have a thought about coming back out because it's easy. And sometimes we spend so much time thinking about what it's going to be like, Jordan, going up. We don't consider when we're going down what might make the going up a little easier. Is anybody hearing what I'm saying this morning? What if we could change our perspective? What if we could rearrange our positioning and really change the way that we think about things? What if we could do that and look at this from a whole different angle? Let me say this. It is common, it is normal, it is almost certain, in fact, to press into Yahweh when things are difficult and when we are being tested, and then relax or chill when we aren't. Most Christians pray more in the middle of a moment that is testing. Most Christians pray more going up the mountain. And then when everything's good, why pray? I'm just going to cruise on down this thing. Now, but what happens when we change our posturing? What happens when we begin to climb up the downside instead of just coasting down the downside? Often we do not even know we need faith until we need it. Exercising faith when it isn't needed, listen to me, exercising faith when it isn't needed prepares the ground for the day of need. Exercising faith when it isn't needed. Life is easy right now, everything's good, the bills are paid, husband loves me, wife loves me, kids are doing good. Exercising faith when it isn't needed, even in those times, Yahweh, Holy Spirit, help me. I want to in every way. I want to exercise my faith. Give me a moment. Cause there to be something I have to have faith for. I know things are easy right now and I don't need to use any faith and I blah, blah, blah. Well, I want to use my faith. And I can tell you, I said to the team this morning, I said, if the people that are leading this house prayed this morning when they got here, and it was the first time all week that they prayed, I don't remember what I said, but basically they're disqualified. Because if we waited till this morning to pray when we came in here, we weren't climbing up the downside. We weren't exercising faith. But if I'm beginning to exercise and when things are easy and I continue to be an intercessor, if I continue to lay hands on my body when I don't know I need healing, when I don't even realize my eyes aren't seeing clearly, when I don't even realize my ears aren't hearing right, when I don't realize my feet are growing feeble, and I'm laying hands on myself when I'm going down the mountain, and I begin to climb up the downside when I begin to say, I'm laying hands on myself when it's easy. I'm exercising faith right now. I'm changing my posture. My posturing is going to indicate that, you know what, while it's easy, I'm preparing today for the day that it's really necessary. I don't know what I need today, but I'm laying hands on myself and I'm an intercessor. I'm saying, Father, in this body, let there be healing. Well, I don't know I need healing. Well, but I might need healing. So I'm laying hands and I'm speaking and declaring my body is well. My body is strong. My eyes can see. My ears can hear. These feet can walk. My mind is sharp. It's easy. So I begin to exercise faith. I rearrange my positioning, my posturing. I rearrange that and I begin to say this about myself. You know what? I'm laying hands on myself and I'm prophesying I am an entrepreneur. I am successful. Well, I am successful. Why would I say I'm successful if I'm successful? Because you won't be successful long. It's what we do on the downside that prepares us for the upside. And if we coast through the downside, which is the nature of man, if we coast through the downside, when the upside comes, it's probably too late. It reminds me of a little story of the virgins and the lamps. When you had time, when it was easy, where were you then? Oh, you didn't hear what I said. When you had time, he said. When it was easy, when provision was there. Just because you thought you could work it all out in the sweet, sweet by and by, he said, had you been planning when you were going down the hill, going up the hill would have been a whole lot easier. We have to reposition our mind and retrain our mind so that we begin to rethink this thing so that when we're on the downside, we see ourselves as still climbing. I am climbing up the downside. I'm climbing up what I do not yet see. I'm climbing up what does not yet exist. I'm not even on the upside yet, but I'm already climbing it while I'm on the downside. I'm climbing it while I'm in the cruise mode. I'm climbing it while I'm in the easy place. I'm laying hands on myself. So what if I change my posturing, pressing in when things are easy? That's the climbing up the downside. We'll provide a place for His sent answer to engage our challenges on the upside. Psalm 16, verse 8. Turn there, please. Psalm 16. I have set the Lord. Let me say this with you here. When you look at the ESV, at least in my version, in most versions, in the King James, you'll see where it says Lord and it's all caps. That's the Tetragrammaton. If you're unfamiliar with that, that's what it means. Anytime you see the name Lord in full caps or God in full caps, either one, Lord or God in full caps, when you see that, that is the Tetragrammaton. That's the translation for that. The Tetragrammaton is YHWH. It is His name, the name God gave Himself, Yahweh. So when you hear me say Yahweh, you hear me say that because He inserted it here, not me. This was His word, not mine. And He said, I have set Yahweh always before me. Because He is at my right hand, I shall not be shaken. Let me say it again, and I want to emphasize this word. He said, I have set the Lord, everybody say, always. When? Always. When? Always. How often? Always. I have set the Lord. Always. Why? Not just on the upside? I have set the Lord always before me. Always before me. Always. When it's great and when it's not so great. I have set the Lord always before me because I have relationship with Him. My wife is my wife on my best day and on my worst day. And I've had some really good days. And I've had some really bad days. And I'm so thankful for the days that have been really bad for me, even if you find that hard to believe, but have been really bad for me. I'm so thankful that my wife, even on those bad days, she keeps loving me. She doesn't bail out on me. She doesn't walk away from me because I had a bad day. But she is always, my wife is always before me. I am always before my wife. The Lord is always. It is wise when we always, everybody say always, keep Him before us. You know, this thing, we need to be careful because it's becoming so true in the church, which is why I did what I did in the beginning of this part of it, why I did what I did at the beginning of this message today. It is becoming so true in the church that compromises become so easy. People will divide themselves. In fact, let me just say it like this based on what I said earlier in the service about this whole Colin Kaepernick issue. I've watched people post more and say more about Colin Kaepernick that go to church and that call themselves believers than they've ever said about God. Because he's more important to them than God is. I've watched people get their shorts in a ruffle over that issue and then laugh and go pay money to watch a movie that sacrilegiously mocks God. And they'd get up and walk out if somebody said something negative about their cause. But they'll pay money. I'm going to see it in IMAX. I'm going to watch them make fun of God on IMAX. They better not touch my social cause, though. It gets quiet in here every now and then. I have set the Lord always before me because he is at my right hand. And because of that, Cletus, because of that, my knees aren't shaking. Because of that, confusion isn't in me. Because of that, I'm certain of my way. I've set the Lord always before me. Because of that, going up and going down, one is no more important or less important than the other. Because what I do on the going down will determine what I do on the going up. What I do in the moment, when nothing's required in the moment. And yet I add something to the moment. I speak to this body. I speak to this mind. I speak to this heart. I speak to these feet. I speak to my purpose. I speak to this. I declare over this thing. Prepares me for the other. He said, I've set the Lord always before me because he is at my right hand and I shall not be shaken. I've got to be diligent both down and up. Live your life so that while resting, you are also engaging until engaging becomes rest. Listen to me again. Live your life so that while resting, you are also engaging. Live your life so that while resting, you are also engaging until engaging becomes rest. Now, in the beginning, if we have trained ourselves in the easy seasons to just lay back and say, look what the Lord has provided for me. I don't need to pray right now. Prayer is unnecessary. I don't need to talk to the Lord right now. Talking to the Lord is unnecessary. He has provided for me this beautiful meadow. I'm just going to run around in this beautiful meadow. I'm going to pick the flower. I'm going to smell the daisies. Because look what the Lord has provided for me. I'm just going to pretend like there's not a care in the world. And I'm just going to wander around in this thing. But what happens, see, in our mind, in our world, for many, for all of us at one point or the other, maybe today, maybe yesterday, maybe tomorrow, but for all of us at one point or another, we come to that place where we've trained ourselves to get in that meadow and just watch the hummingbirds fly. Watch the cow ant search after its prey. We've trained ourselves to get into that place when it's time of rest and peace, and we interpret that rest as, what am I going to do now? I'm going to go over here and make me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and eat it by the brook. I'm just going to lay back here and breathe in all this fresh air because that's what we've trained ourselves to do. But what if, when we get in the meadow, we see the meadow differently? What if in that time of rest and we get into the meadow, I look around that meadow and I see the daisies, and I see the cow ant, and I see the hummingbird, and I begin to consider what possibilities lie in this season of rest. What opportunities are there in this time of rest? Does rest mean doing nothing, or does rest really demonstrate itself through in my engagement when there are no challenges? What if in the meadow, instead of just gazing at the hummingbird, take it in for a moment, but then begin to consider, are there more? What if I went from this brook, I believe I see something on the other side, and I begin to move over here, and instead of just putting out a little picnic place and a little blanket and a place to sit and eat and to smell the flowers and to watch the birdies fly, what if instead of lying still and just setting up camp, what if I begin to move around in this and I begin to engage it? To the point where, see, in our mind we're thinking, I don't want to engage anything, I just want to be still. I just want to be still. You don't understand, I just want to be still. But see, what about when we retrain our thoughts? We retrain our mind. We let Holy Spirit really get a hold of us, and in those moments, our engagement becomes our rest. In fact, we aren't resting when we're still. What happens when we realize I'm really not resting when I'm sitting here watching the hummingbird fly? What am I missing on the other side of the tree? There's something over the hill, just beyond the horizon. If I sit here and only take this in, what happens if I get up, I use some energy, and I engage and I say, show me, Holy Spirit, what next? And I get over to the horizon and I look over there and, oh my, it's a beautiful herd of elk. I've always wanted to see elk. Or whatever you want to see. Mammoths. Whatever. You get my point. But when our engagement becomes our rest, when we get into that place, and then we get on the other side of that horizon, and all of a sudden we begin to, because this is what will happen, this is what will happen, this is what will happen. At some point in the journey, let me wrap this up. At some point in the journey, that meadow is going to begin to take on a different form. All of a sudden, where there were flowers, those flowers will begin to fade, and there'll be a little rocky place begin to show up. And then that little rocky place will begin to ascend until it begins to appear to be and become a mountain. And then you realize this place that I was easily, effortlessly walking across without any energy or effort whatsoever, all of a sudden now I'm at the foot of this giant mountain I've got to climb. Because that's the nature of seasons. It's not because the Father says, I like to watch how you climb mountains. That's because He says it's through these times that you really demonstrate where your trust is. But see, I let you exist in the meadow not so that you could watch the birdies fly. I let you exist in the meadow so that you could prepare yourself for the day the mountain rises up in the meadow. Because it will. Do you hear me today? I'm preparing you now for that moment so that you begin to lay hands on yourself. And I'll tell you, with all of this stuff that's going on, all this stuff going on in our culture and in our nation and all the fights and the fussing and the argument and all of that that's going on, most people that are responding in a way that does not demonstrate the kingdom would have clearly seen the truth had they been preparing in the meadow the day the mountain rose. They'd have been we would have been better prepared had we been engaging in our time of rest so that when the mountain appeared, we had already considered its possibilities. And we had kept the Lord always before us. Not only when faith was needed, in fact, we need faith more when we don't think we need it than we do when we know we need it. Your greatest need for faith is when you have no reason for it. Because engaging the Father when things are easy isn't as easy as it sounds. Because when it's easy, you turn your attention to those things that all of a sudden you think need to get done. Now, I'll just set you aside just a little bit, Yahweh. You've really set me up in a good place. I really like this place, so I'm just going to set you aside and all these other things. But I tell you, when it starts getting rough again, you'll be hearing my voice again. Right now, I'm going to focus my attention on these other things over here. And he said, no. You focus your attention now, and when that stuff comes up, you'll be able to keep doing what you're supposed to be doing. People don't fail in the good moment. They fail in the bad one because they didn't prepare when it was good. People that lost their homes, people that lost stuff, not everybody, but most people, that lost their homes, lost their jobs, lost their income, lost their resources, whatever, when the economy crashed in 2006, 5, whatever it was. People that lost things did not lose them because the economy crashed. They lost them because they didn't prepare when things were good. That's just being honest. Man, that economy, it really got me. It busted me, man. I'm telling you what, it took me about 2 weeks and I ran through all of my savings. That's because you didn't save when you had something to save. You went to Disney. You bought you a new car. You bought you a new house. You didn't have a rainy day fund. You didn't plan. You didn't engage in your rest. You didn't climb up the downside. How do we change that going forward? We prepare. Climbing up the downside is all about you and me. Recognizing that when things are easy, it's then that we're really preparing ourselves for the moment when things aren't so easy. So let me say this. Let me wrap it up like this. So if you're listening to what I'm saying today and you can receive what I'm saying today, that's between you and the Father. And I have nothing to do with whether or not you receive what I'm saying today. But if you can receive what I'm saying today, I believe it will be life to you. If you can get what I'm saying today, it will be life to you. And I'm saying this. For those of you that are it's easy right now. Things are great. Engage now. Exercise faith now. For what? Well, financially, relationally, spiritually. Because when you're going up the mountain, all of those things are tested. Your relationship with your family, your friends, your job, the Father, your finances, all those things are tested. But if you engage now in the rest, you climb up the down, you're climbing, you are engaging when it's easy, so that when the mountain comes up, you're ready. You are ready to ascend. And you can look at the mountain, you can say, bring it. Instead of looking at the mountain and saying, no, not again. You can say to the enemy, that's all you've got. That's all you've got. You didn't know it. But when I was going through the meadow, you thought I was checking out the hummingbird. But I was preparing for this, baby, and I am ready. Give me all you've got because I am not afraid. I have climbed up the downside, and now that I'm looking at the upside, it's going to be like going down. It has no power over me. Does anybody hear me in this house this morning? Stand with me if you would, please, this morning. Honey, join me.